Head down, you gotta have tunnel vision just to break the crowd. Some people will always be a bit thick in the head. Show out, well if you tell the truth they might scream and shout. You put in the work, now to knock 'em dead. And I hope that we can laugh it off someday. But the best things happen when you let them come your way, yeah. And I know that we'll laugh it off someday. So head down for now. Head down where there ain't a lot of love coming from your town. These people wish they could sing but can't carry a tune. Slow down, it doesn't mean you're wrong when you've got your doubts. Be patient, it's all coming soon. And I hope that we can laugh this off someday. But the best things happen when you let it come your way, yeah. And I know that we'll be laughing it off someday. So head down for now. So head down for now.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Diverge Media. We're excited to bring you another important discussion tonight, and it's obviously a controversial subject, and our guest has been with us before, is Russell from the host of Coffee Breath Conversations. He'll be sharing a personal story and relating this to a bigger topic, the topic at hand tonight. And so, I guess let's just bring Russell in and maybe start with kind of why this is on your mind in the first place, and then we can go through some of the relevant discussion points. Maybe that's a good place to start.
I really appreciate you bringing me back to the show again. Definitely, Drag Queen Storytime Hour is definitely a contentious topic right now, especially with the cultural sort of battle, I guess, going on of ideas of what is acceptable in the culture, what's not acceptable in culture right now. And it is definitely a topic that I have interest in. We've seen online Drag Queen Storytime Hour equivalated quite often with the term grooming, right? James Lindsay made famous the term okay groomer. And it has created quite a controversy online overall, and I think it's a discussion that we need to have. I think the discussion needs to be had with people that are willing to not discuss in bad faith. Whenever I see discussions happen online, it's just people saying, well, you're just a transphobe, or you're just a homophobe, or just throwing arbitrary labels. And on the other side too, people are saying, well, you just want to expose your kids to drag queens because of some nefarious reason. And that, I think the conversation is a little bit more nuanced. However, I do believe personally, and I'll put this out there right out front, that I don't believe that children should be attending drag shows. I don't believe that Drag Queen Storytime Hour in general is child friendly. These drag queens are not clowns, for example. I've heard the analogy that, oh, they're just like clowns. Well, clowns go to school, they learn child psychology, and they are licensed, and they are professionals that are in their field. Drag queens, not all of them, but from what I've seen, it's, let's call up the local drag queen, LGBT group, and get a drag queen to come down and read a story for kids. And they're not really trained to to, with child psychology and that. In some cases, we've seen some cases where they haven't been vetted, and there's been people that have had sexual assault charges and things like that that have been involved with this. But I think the
And we'll
key
and we'll wade into some of these things. We have images we're going to show, and I just need to put this out here at the beginning of the show. There will be sensitive images. There will be videos that many will find disturbing. But again, if we're going to have a conversation about such a difficult topic, there needs to be both sides of the conversation. And I think a lot of the conservative outrage that happens is because they feel like they're not being heard at all, and they don't have a say or a voice in the matter, and at least in the mainstream media's eyes. So there's this both sides of the discussion, and we're hoping to provide the nuance and the other side of the discussion that isn't being discussed, because I think we both talked before we went live here, and I don't care what somebody does between two consenting adults. I think the conservative viewpoint here, and maybe not even conservative, I hate using the left-right paradigm because many people take issue with this, but the issue lies when you involve children. And I'm sure you're going to weigh into that more as well. But I just felt the need to get that out there before we continue here.
Well, just remembering any activity that involves children needs to be held to a higher level of scrutiny than if it was just an activity that was held between two consenting adults. 100%. So anytime we have an activity, that could be construed negatively involving children, I think that we need to apply additional filters to it to make sure that what we're doing is appropriate, and that we have a clear objective behind it. For example, if you bring a clown to entertain children, you're doing it because they're at a birthday party, or there's some type of event where there's an expectation of children's entertainment. So what I've seen in some cases, for example, is there was the news story I sent, and I know we're going to play the video, where the newscaster says it humanizes the drag queen when they do storytime hour. And my question is, why is it the child's responsibility to affirm the adult? To me, that's a backwards paradigm. The adult should not require affirmation from children. They should have their own support groups. They should have the things that they need to be able to, function in society and feel welcomed in society, without requiring children to say, yes, what you're doing is okay. That's a backwards paradigm, and I don't think it's very appropriate. Now, to put this into context, one of the things I'm going to discuss here, when I was a child, there was a person that was related to our family who groomed their way into our lives and then ended up sexually assaulting my sibling multiple times over several years, and eventually did get caught, and went to prison, and did some time there. But of course, the sex offender goes to prison for a few years, where quite often they are shielded, so they live on special ranges. The victim service officer at one point had called my family to inform my family that this offender was in minimum security. And from what I've learned over the years, minimum security it's a day camp. So
yeah, in many regards, it is. It's basically the closest you can get to civilian life without any of the responsibilities, though.
So my family got to go through years and years of additional dysfunction, divorce, all sorts of terrible things, while this sex offender got to hang around with other sex offenders in minimum security. And the grooming process itself, what happens with the grooming process is that it's a slow reduction in boundaries. So what happened is over time, this person that wasn't had an intended target victim, and what they did is they inserted themselves into our lives slowly, and they basically got closer and closer and began to take down some of those boundaries and that. So, my parents both had to work, so, oh, that's okay, I can babysit, the kids and things like that. And you know what, why don't you folks take the night off, and we would go, and we would hang around and that, and again, just more and more involvement in our lives, and becoming more and more, I would say not inappropriate, but just sort of crossing lines. And because this person was deemed to be just a friendly relative, my parents, they're not bad people or anything like that. In hindsight's always 2020. They basically they didn't see the signs until afterwards, and there
That's
is
not
a
unusual. Just to add context there, I don't want anybody to walk away from that and think that was an unusual situation. Most people aren't aware of those signs, and maybe we can talk a little bit about that in a little more detail as we go throughout the show here. I don't mean to interrupt. I'm just trying to give you a
no,
little bit more
definitely.
time to think things through and give context to the conversation.
Well, one of the big red flags that I've seen with this is, number one, I have been to drag shows before, and I know people, and I've even watched a few episodes of RuPaul's Drag Race, which I think is really what kind of brought this into the cultural zeitgeist for this overall, and the mainstreaming of this. Because when you look at a show like RuPaul's Drag Race, yeah, it's raunchy and it's sexual, because drag is sexual. It's raunchy. It's woman face. It's misogynistic overall. It's mockery, but it's done in a way that's supposed to be burlesque and sort of dramatic, but always sexualized from what I've seen. But what people see on RuPaul's Drag Race is, I don't want to say it's the cream of the crop, but those people are selected from auditions. And so you're not getting the drag queens that most likely you're going to see in some of these community events. And I mean, I've been to drag shows. I've seen how raunchy it can get. I've seen the sexualized aspects of drag shows, and you know what? That's fine for adults that want to participate in that type of entertainment. There's nothing wrong with that. However, I don't believe that's appropriate for children.
And to provide a little pushback for that, I mean, because I'm just going to give the kind of the mainstream media version of events here is, well, what's the harm in it, right? We have an adult in drag coming to read Dr. Seuss to kids. What's the big deal? And I've seen this time and time again, and I think the disconnect here is what is deemed appropriate for children. And we're going to actually, I think this is a really good time. You sent me a video earlier. That's actually a drag queen expressing kind of this idea that we're kind of discussing, is there's a place and time for this type of thing, and it's not in front of children. And so rather than use our own words, let's just bring in this video here. So this is, that is the wrong image. Sorry, everyone. We'll be coming back to that.
Well, we say sorry for that image, but that is an actual image. Those are actual images from actual performances put on at children's events, or events that children were invited to.
Yeah, and for context, I'm apologizing because I'd like to give time for people to prepare for that if they didn't want to see it. And so I apologize just popping on the screen by accident. I clicked the wrong link. I'm just finding the link I thought I had all lined up. Like many things tonight, didn't quite work out that way.
No,
so
that's all right. And so the video in if I believe, is it the drag queen that's speaking out about Drag Queen Storytime Hour? So that's actually Kitty. That's a drag queen known as Kitty D'Amour, and Kitty D'Amour did a video that basically outlines a lot of the points I've already made, basically saying that it's adult entertainment and that children shouldn't be involved in adult entertainment. And you know what? I'm going to play devil's advocate against my own point here for a second. I'm quite sure that there has been drag queen storytime hour where nothing went wrong, nothing was inappropriate. I'm sure it's happened. Absolutely, I'm sure it's happened. However, quite often I hear it from the left who tell me, well, drag queen storytime hour, are you so concerned about, for whatever reason they think, that we're not concerned about pedophile priests and we're not concerned about child beauty pageants, which I didn't know was a right-wing thing. Apparently the left has associated child beauty pageants with the right, although I'm pretty sure the only people that associate with child beauty pageants are drunk wine moms that are trying to live vicariously through their daughters. So at the end of the day, just like I'm sure not every priest has molested a child, I'm sure that there has been drag shows that have happened where there hasn't been anything inappropriate. But the thing is, just like the left likes to tell the right that they need to clean up their churches, and that, now remember, the church for the left is wokeness. That is their church, that their cult. But I understand where they're coming from, but they also need to realize that if that's the case, then they need to also clean house on their side. This is something I really thought we could be bipartisan about, where the left and right could come together and say, you know what, let's get these groomers, let's get these perverts out of our communities, because it's not a left or right thing. I mean, every single time I see a video or a post on Twitter and it's, a drag queen being inappropriate, during drag queen storytime hour, and I sent you the pictures and the videos, and I got them all saved, and that, so I got the receipts. I get this thing, and it's a list of Republican, what is the list they always put? Republicans that have been charged with sexual assault or convicted of sexual assault, whatever. And I'm like, okay, where's the own here? In no way, shape, or form am I saying that, we need to look away from one side's crimes. This would be something good. I'm glad we're naming and shaming perverts. Now let's do it on both sides, and let's get these perverts out of our communities.
I think it speaks to the partisan age we live in, that everything's now a battle. Everything is left versus right, even when it's not. It's just good is good, bad is bad, and bad things need to be called out. And when we don't, we do a disservice to society. But before we get much further, we're going to pop in this video, and we'll play that for everyone here. This is Kitty D'Amour, a drag queen, talking a message for parents to stop taking your children to drag shows and drag queen story hours. So we're just going to play that video.
What in the hell has a drag queen ever done to make you have so much respect for them and admire them so much, other than put on makeup and jump on the floor and writhe around and do sexual things on stage? I have absolutely no idea why you would want that to influence your child. Would you want a stripper or a porn star to influence your child? It makes no sense at all. A drag queen performs in a nightclub for adults. There is a lot of filth that goes on, a lot of sexual stuff that goes on. And backstage, there's a lot of nudity, sex, and drugs. Okay? So I don't think that this is an avenue you would want your child to explore. They could explore dressing up at home like we all did, like all gay boys did. We all dressed at home and we had a great time. We had a great time with our girlfriends, putting on makeup, trying on clothes, things like that. But to actually get them involved in drag is extremely, extremely irresponsible on your part. And I understand you might want to look like you're with it, that you're cool, that you're woke, that you're not a Nazi, that you're not a homophobe, whatever it may be. But you can raise your child to be just a normal, regular, everyday child without including them in gay sexual things. And honestly, you're not doing the gay community any favors. In fact, you're hurting us, okay? We have already had a reputation of being pedophiles and being perverts and deviants. We don't need you to bring your children around. So you keep your kids at home, or take them to Disneyland, or take them to Chuck E. Cheese. But if you need your child to be entertained by a big human in a costume or in makeup, take them to the circus or something. When they turn 18, then why don't you take them to the clubs on their 18th birthday? Because it's an adult thing, okay? So don't ruin your child's life, and don't ruin us, because that's what you're doing. What?
All right, so that's Kitty Demore.
Well, Kitty
and
nailed
again,
it on
it's
the
not
head.
to say that. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's pretty spot on, and it's not that somebody, like, again, you'll find the outlier. This is what happens in politics, right? When people don't want to actually acknowledge wrongdoing, they'll find the outlier and they'll say, look, and maybe not the outlier, we don't know, but they'll find the example that suits their narrative. And what I mean by that is, like, well, look, here's an example of drag queens just sitting down and they're dressed, appropriately, and they're reading Dr. Seuss. What's the big deal? Well, the big deal is there's, for every, instance of that, there's a lot of instances where that's not the case. And in general, I think the argument that you're making in general, I don't mean to paraphrase, and you correct me if I'm wrong, is that in general, drag is not something that is family friendly. It is in general sexualized.
Well, I believe that. I believe that drag is inherently sexual. And I won't repeat what I kind of said earlier, but I mean, the point kind of still stands. But I also, well, Wyatt just said it plainly right there. If it was a stripper, it would be the same thing. It's, at the end of the day, drag is male burlesque. It is attached heavily to gay culture. And at the end of the day, these kids didn't drive themselves to the library. They didn't drive themselves to the school. They didn't, as some of them, oh man, some of those videos I've seen, the one I sent you, where on the background, the neon sign, it says it's not going to lick itself. And they're serving alcohol there. And there's kids literally sitting there in the audience. When will some of these parents turn around and say, oh, wow, you know what? This isn't appropriate. Wow. And you know what? I think in a lot of cases, I really think it comes down to, because, and here's the thing. Yeah, there we go. There's the picture. Yeah, it's not going to lick itself. There's whole videos from that event too.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I can see at least 6, 7 kids in the.
Yeah. And there's actually, if you watch the video, there's more there, and here's the thing. If I brought a child to a strip club, I would hope that the police would be called and that I would be escorted out and questioned and at the very least cautioned, probably investigated. But in this case, the societal norms and the rules and the boundaries all just go right out the window. And in some ways, I feel bad for the drag queens too. I do feel bad for them in some ways, because for some of these drag queens, this is how they make their living, right? So what are they going to do? They're going to turn down money? And I guess we could all say, well, it's the morals and the ethics behind it. And that's all very nice and easy to say when we're sitting here on this show. But at the end of the day, when people need money to eat and things like that, at the end of the day, the drag queens agreed to it. The parents have agreed to it. And in most cases, I'm sorry, I'm going to pick on women here, and I'm sorry, but most of these videos I've seen, it's woke white moms bringing their child to these events. And I get it. You want your child to grow up to be accepting of different people. You know what? And I think that's good. We should accept all people in society, well, except for perverts and pedophiles. They can all burn in hell. But we want people to grow up, and we want people to be accepting. But I don't think this is the way to do it. And I'm going to pose a question here. You know who could really, really use some entertainment, and they are adults, is elderly people. So I've never seen once drag queen story time hour done in a elderly folks home. Never once seen that. People that might enjoy the whimsical costumes and the silliness of it all. Maybe they wouldn't, who knows, but I've never actually seen it where they've offered to go to, places where there is adults and do these things. The focus is on children. And in some cases, not all cases, but I believe in some cases, it's this idea that, we have to be progressive at all costs. For some of these people, we have to be progressive. If we draw a line in the sand, if we say drag queen storytime hour is a line too far, well, now you're conservative because you drew a line in the sand. And I do believe there's some slippery slope aspect to it as well. Because again, what you're doing is you're taking adult concepts and you're introducing them to children. Now, do I think that every drag queen that's there is a pervert or molesting kids or anything like that? Absolutely not. But what happens is they're exposed to these concepts, and then over time they start to say, okay, well, if I'm at a drag queen show and they're twerking on the ground and all the adults are laughing and giving them money, and sometimes they even give the kids the money to give to the burlesque dancer, the male burlesque dancer dressed in drag, what they're doing is they're sending a specific message that this is normal behavior in society,
whether intended or not, right? And I call this the new compassion. And I use compassion with quotations. It's this idea that in order to be, kind and move forward as a society, to be progressive, we need to be accepting of all behaviors. And that's just not the case. In fact, I would argue it's quite the opposite. In a society where you want to do what's best for people, oftentimes it means telling people no. And it oftentimes means doing uncomfortable things like making that line in the sand. But our society has spun things on its head in recent years, it seems, to be that it is somehow virtuous to not have lines in the sand, to not have black and white areas, and everything is sort of gray now. And that is kind of the new compassion. It's, well, who am I to say? And then now it used to be just, well, who am I to say? And now it's taken that next step in, well, if I really think this and I really don't care what they do, I need to show it by going to these extremes. And that's now meant children at drag shows, children at drag queen story hours, and just in general, just things that I don't feel are appropriate for children. Again, why it actually popped in here, you bring your children around people that you want them to aspire to be, people that are role models. You wouldn't bring your child to a strip show. At least I hope, and there's a reason for that. I don't think we want our children aspiring to be strippers. If you're a stripper, we're not knocking you. We're not trying to degrade you. That's your decision. We don't care. But the issue is when we try to get children who are susceptible, who aren't able to make up their own minds, to think these things are okay and that they're almost something to be aspired to. And I think that's the difference. Not that they're just okay, but something it's to be aspired to. It's special. It's celebrated in a sense.
Well, what I'll say is this: compassion equals affirmation. So like I said before, that news clip, and I think we should play the video where the newscaster says we just want, these drag queens to be seen as human beings. Why is that a child's responsibility? And I'm going to take it a step further here. although this isn't the primary topic of our conversation, let's talk about, TikTok for a second. You have these teachers, and what they do is they come out to their students. All right. Now, what happens when they come out to their students? They do this big video, all the students are in the classroom, and the teacher goes, and I'm gay. And all the students go wild. They're like, oh my God, Mrs. So-and-so, you're gay, you're fabulous, you're amazing. Why is it the child's responsibility to affirm the adult's decision? That is the boundary there. And if we can force children to have to affirm adults in all sorts of situations like that, we can definitely push even further. And we've seen cases where it does get pushed further. So at the end of the day, I would say the youth growing up today are more tolerant than any youth in previous generations. I 100% believe that. They're more accepting and tolerant than probably any other generation. And we got there, from the 90s and the 80s, from rights movements and that. But now we're seeing a cultural zeitgeist now where it's believed that we're not even there yet, but we are there. But now it's to the point where immature adults, man child, woman child, whatever, is living in this almost regressed form where they require children and youth to affirm their social status. It's highly inappropriate, in my opinion, highly inappropriate. And at the end of the day, in my opinion, it opens up a can of worms where it can open children up to predation by real predators. Because at the end of the day, there is no boundaries, and children, are not being taught appropriate boundaries because of that. And situations before that might have been red flags are now just normalized.
Like being around a half naked adult and putting money in their crotch.
Well, definitely.
And just for the record, we're going to show images here in a little bit, and maybe we'll play that video and then kind of go and get them out on the record, just so people know what we're discussing, because we've been in communication back and forth and shared these images and videos, and just for the record, my wife was in the room when I had some of these videos playing, and she shot a glare at me like, what in the heck are you watching, as some of these videos were coming on. And I started going down the rabbit hole of kind of the YouTube channels that are pushing this kind of ideology, just because I needed to see it for myself. And I think that's where that's the huge disconnect, if you want to make it partisan, between the left and the right. The left isn't seeing any harm here. They'll show the Dr. Seuss story hour, and the right's going, listen, I see these videos. I'm looking, I see TikTok videos. I see, children stuffing bills in the crotches and in the bra straps of these performers, if you will. And I think that's problematic. I see problems on the horizon with that kind of thing being pushed into a child's psyche where they don't understand the difference.
Well, and then when you say that, they turn it around and they do a Darvo tactic: deny, attack, reflect, oh my God, I should know this. Deny, attack, reverse, victim, and offender. So you say, hey, I'm seeing a kid, he's putting a dollar bill in this drag queen stripper's thong. And they say, well, you're only noticing that because you're a pedophile. You're a pervert. You're the pervert. And that all Republicans, all conservatives are perverts. You're just projecting. And they just repeat it over and over and over again. And you say, no, I just don't think that children should be putting dollar bills in, drag queen strippers' thongs. I don't think that that's appropriate. Oh, you're just a bigot. You're a transphobe, and that you're anti-sex work, and that you hate sex workers. You want them to get raped and murdered. And you're like, whoa, where is all this coming from? But that is the deflection. That's the Darvo tactic. in action. And that is how they have managed to, in a way, for many people that I've seen, they're like, well, I don't agree with it, but I'm just going to stay quiet because I just really, really don't want the hassle that comes with stepping up into, saying that this is wrong. And, one thing I'll say to these, if there's any of these woke parents or any of these, social justice people that are tuning into this, I'll say this, the gay community fought for a long time to rid themselves of the label that gay men are perverts and pedophiles.
Yeah,
Because they're not. But there has been a very long-standing belief. I mean, there was that anti-marijuana video from the 60s and it was, and it showed this man, if they consume marijuana, and this gay man was going to get your kids, basically. And you know what, the gay community, I'm going to say this, you still need to clean house. And that Gays Against Groomers, they're out there. They're finding the perverts and they're exposing them, and good, because Milo Yiannopoulos said that, when he was a teenager, he was basically groomed and then was in a relationship with a man that was older. Well, that's statutory rape at the end of the day. What occurred, in that relationship was illegal. George Tackey, if you want to talk about the left, George Tackey, same thing. Gay man said that when he was a teenager, he was in a relationship with an older man. So we, as society and the gay community are trying to dissociate themselves from these people. But then you have these woke wine mommies that want to, they want to appear woke, and they want to be able to take videos and put it on Instagram to show their friends how down they are with the cause. And they are bringing their children to these things. The one video, I didn't send it to you, but the one video I saw, this lady, this woman, she was saying, "Oh, my kid's gay," and the kid's like, "No, I'm not." And she's like, "Yeah, you are." And I was like, "Well, for fuck's sake!" Like, I don't know if I can swear like that on here.
I'll try not to if you can.
Sorry about that. Hopefully, you don't get demonetized for that. But
I'm already demonetized.
Oh man. But yeah, at the end of the day, no one, well, okay, there's probably some religious right conservatives that just want gays gone and drag queens gone and all that. That's been part of gay culture for years. RuPaul's Drag Race, in my opinion, was the zeitgeist moment, because people saw that and they're like, well, look at these, they're a little kind of weird and sometimes they're a little sexual, but they look like they're generally friendly drag queens. And my kids watch the show, and because again, they're not seeing, most of these people have not been to a gay club where there's been a drag queen show going on. Because I'll tell you, it ain't RuPaul's Drag Race. All right, nothing like that. Kitty D'Amour, all right, telling the truth on that. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with that. I don't know if we want to start showing some of the shock images here. Let's shock the audience.
Yeah, I think now's a good time to do that. We'll play that newscast where we just discuss kind of the affirming of an adult from children. And by the way, I would add, I meant to say something. I didn't want to interrupt your train of thought, but it is not a healthy psyche to need outside affirmation to make you feel whole as a person. That's not a healthy place to be. And it's especially not healthy to involve adolescents and children in that affirmation process to make yourself feel good.
Well, I'll take it a step further. I'm going to take it one step further. What's happened now because of the affirmation process where the children are required to affirm the adults now. And I'm going to go on a very slight tangent here. This is nothing new. If you look at any TV show that's geared towards teenagers these days, what do you see? You see a dad who's an absolute moron. You see a mom who's crazy. She's cluster B personality all the way. And they're so incapable of managing their day-to-day lives. The children have to go around and basically be the adults because the adults are so incapable. And that's the programming that children are exposed to. But I'm going to take it a step further here and say that the affirmation process is just one step detached from the child drag queen. All right.
And there's
that's
images
the
of
new
that
thing
too, right? And that is
well
being promoted as well. But
there's a new series coming out on Discovery it's called like, I don't know, like children drag children or something like that. I'm like, well, if the left is promoting this show and saying, "Oh my God, it's so affirming and it's so great and all that," what the hell is the difference between that show and the child beauty pageants they seem to think the right is all excited about? Which, again, I've never seen a conservative actually support child beauty pageants. The only people I've ever seen support child beauty pageants are loser single moms who are trying to relive their childhood through their daughters in very inappropriate ways. Or
all
not,
right.
sorry, not their childhood. They want to live the beautiful life they never had through their children daughters and their teenage daughters.
A true conservative analogy of living through your child would be your dad rides your ass at baseball practice because he wants you he wants you to, go to the big leagues, right? I
Oh, yeah.
almost went there, son. And then just that, it's that exact same thing, but
Well,
different
100%.
sides.
No, definitely. It's a conservatives aren't immune to that either, and like you said, it's the guy who almost made it to the OHL or NHL or whatever, but fell short. So now the kid's gonna have the dream they never had.
All right. So, warning to everyone here: we're about to show images that you may find disturbing. There will be a news clip at the beginning, and then I'll be playing or scrolling through some pictures to kind of give background to some of what we're talking about, because it's hard to understand if your context is the show like RuPaul, or you've seen images from a drag queen story hour and it's very banal. You don't see any issue with it. They're just reading Dr. Seuss. They were dressed decently. I don't see the issue. So this is the flip side of that conversation.
Well, Dr. Seuss was canceled, right?
Yeah, I forgot about that, but here we go. Oh, we got the wrong one. Where are we at?
How significant are those 2 dates?
Yeah, and also hours before what they called an all-ages drag brunch, which is probably the number one target of these anti-LGBTQ events recently. Like, for example, the Proud Boys will go and protest any drag brunch, any drag story hour, anything that a child might go to meet a drag queen, not just to show them that they're human beings and people. They go there and they read Dr. Seuss there. They read
right there
regular books, but it's read by a drag queen, and they have breakfast. It is not some hypersexual event, but that's what it's viewed as on the far right. And these spaces,
okay, can we pause it there?
Dangerous places.
So right there, viewing as human, these places have become targets for the far right. Well, that's a dangerous statement to say, because we've seen cases where parents have gone and they have expressed their concern about, drag events at schools and storytime hour in their local school library. Are they far right? Again, here's the problem. Another problem here. Far right, racist, bigot, homophobe, transphobe, those terms are thrown around so loosely now. Do you know how many times a day on Twitter when I say, "Hey, I don't think this is right. Maybe we should be, maybe not doing this." They come down. They're just like, "Oh, you're just a transphobe." But I'm like, well, I don't think I am. I mean, I don't have an innate fear of transgender people. In fact, what consenting adults want to do to their bodies, although I don't think that our healthcare system should pay for it, but that's another issue altogether. If they want to add parts, they want to take parts away, that's up to them. Really, what adults do to their bodies is none of my business. So when they say, "Well, you're a transphobe," well, at the end of the day, they need to remember too, the gay community is not a monolith. It isn't. There's a lot of gay people that don't agree. And also, drag is not transgender. Drag is not directly related to transgenderism. Drag is gay male burlesque in action. So again, there's so many little things, and everyone wants to have that gotcha moment. And don't kid yourself, the right does it too. And I've caught myself on a few occasions trying to go for the gotcha moment and that, but now I don't even do that anymore. Now they say, well, this never happens, which of course the thing that they always say, oh, the thing that never happens keeps happening. How does that happen? But now I have a whole cache of stuff and I say, okay, well, you say this isn't happening. What about this? And then I watch the excuses start pouring out. In fact, in some cases, in the most extreme cases of cognitive dissonance that I've seen, I've shown these videos and pictures, and I literally have people denying reality. Scott Adams calls it, we discussed the last time we had a discussion on this, two shows on one screen. I'm literally seeing this drag queen on all fours going up to this child who's in a chair, and they're doing like a sultry on all fours thing. And I'm like, how the hell is that not sexual? And then they're just like, well, they're just doing a dance. You're the one that's seeing it as sexual. You're the pervert. And I'm like, how can you possibly, you have engaged in cognitive dissonance. You have cleansed yourself of wrong think. You are passing the purity test because you have cleansed yourself of wrong think. Anyways, enough of that rant.
I'm going to pull these images in a little bit one at a time. And again, I'm going to try to cycle through these quickly.
Well, here's the most extreme case. This is probably one of the most extreme cases. The one you showed previously of the drag queen sitting in the chair. Again, not a trained person that deals, with children, so they wouldn't know what they're doing is inappropriate. Again, I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they're a pervert. I don't know. But I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and say that they haven't attended any type of child training, that they are there as a performer and they are putting their performance on, and their performance means that they are going to continue to wear, like a tight skirt and not wear appropriate underwear. The picture with the little girl with all the dollar bills in the I don't know if it's a woman or transgender person, or whatever. That's the most extreme case. That truly is. And I got to give credit. I have not seen I've only seen the most extreme people defend that and say, oh, like strippers are people too, and that sort of thing. Well, and why it's saying it's never a man dressed in some Victorian woman's gown, and that's always outfit hyperbolized women's. Well, of course, that is what drag is. Drag is literally misogynistic. It's literally taking the most exaggerated aspects of femininity and making a mockery of it for humor. And that, my mom, she wore a Minnie Mouse jacket, and she had a huge purse, and she wore her hair in a handkerchief, and she wore like these like jeans. I'd never seen a drag queen dressed like that. She was just a middle-class mom going to work, and that, right here. If this was a trained person in how to properly, deliver child entertainment like a clown or something like that, they would have never allowed that to happen.
I would even argue you're being extremely charitable, because any person with a head on their shoulders would know that that's 100%. Inappropriate. And I get, we're trying to be careful here and give the benefit of the doubt, because again, we're not trying to misalign someone unduly. But I would argue that, there's clear examples here of who in their right mind would say that's appropriate for children. Like I popped a few of these images on the screen. Like we're looking, here's one, a child touching the crotch of a mermaid, right? And this is the same thing that keeps coming up. And again, if you're going to talk about one side, you need to talk about the other side of that argument. And there is legitimate reasons that there is people upset at this, and maybe they've gone all in and they're lumping it all together, but by not acknowledging the crux of the conversation, the crux of the issue that they're bringing forth, you're not helping cases. You're not helping the gay community. You're not helping the drag queen community, because you're just polarizing the subject more and actually creating more issues for that community that you claim to want to help.
Well, and at the end of the day, gay men don't need woke wine moms to defend them. They're quite capable of defending themselves. Believe me, I'm quite accustomed to, I know several people in the community. I have friends growing up, like one of my friends, when I was in a band in my early 20s, I was in a punk rock band, and one of my friends that was in the band was a transsexual. And that, so it's not like I don't know this scene and these people and that, and they don't need the woke to defend them. And that, and you're seeing quite a divide. You're seeing the gays and the lesbians really starting to separate themselves. To me, it all happened when they started making the word queer part of the common kind of decorum. That was a slur. That was a slur for a very long time. And you just showed that picture, future drag queen. That's not grooming. That's not grooming.
Well, this is the thing. Like, why? Just why? What is that kid learning? She looks by the statue. We can't see the face, but like, I have daughters all the way down from 2 to 8 years old. Like, that's like a 2 to 3 year old kid wearing, future. Again, you're saying, well, it's not grooming, and well, it's just accepting. We're just trying to be. They don't understand what they're wearing, but you understand what they're wearing, and so this is where kind of that concern comes in, I guess. Why are people bringing their kids to these shows in the first place? Like, I mean, that gets into the hypothetical and opinion area. But is it just this extreme compassion where they feel it's the right thing to do? Or is there a bit of, again, that there's that element of it? There's those people that are doing that. And then, like you said, there's concern that it opens Pandora's box, so to speak, to actual grooming and to actual real issues that would come with this type of, ultimately predatory behavior. And it's now accepting or kind of forcing people to accept that behavior or be deemed uncompassionate, bigoted, and othered otherwise from society into of the acceptable class of society.
Well, and the other thing too is so that child is wearing a shirt that says future drag queen. You don't think that's not a magnet for predators? You don't think that that's not something a predator is going to turn around and say, hey, I could groom myself into that family's life to have access to that child, because they know that someone that's willing to make their child wear that is willing to be woke at all costs. And you said Pandora's box. Pandora's box is, in my opinion, already been blown wide open on this stuff. And that Jessica said the Balenciaga is an example where the enemy wants to take this, but they've been taking this there for years. Like here's right here. Like, that isn't even drag anymore. That's not drag. That's literally something that should be investigated by the police. That's not drag. That is literally just, that is a naked adult man laughing and posing with a child. It is not appropriate in any way, shape, or form. And the police should have been called. It should have been investigated. Maybe charges don't get laid, but at the very least, it's going to tell that person there's a boundary here and you are not to cross that boundary. Just like, and this is just like how with, for example, like Boy Scouts and sports teams and that, like, there are strict rules in there because there have been histories of terrible, abusive things happening. That's why those boundaries are there. And you're muted.
I'd back this up a little bit, and I've said to my wife often, like, it's not that everyone, who does, like, it's not like every drag queen's a predator. No one's saying that. But if I was a predator, I would think that's a pretty good venue or opportunity to maybe exploit that predation with children. And he talked about Boy Scouts and there's strict rules in place. It's like, well, of course, because predators go to where children are, where they have access to them. And so being aware of that, like, how is this any different? In fact, more so because of the background and context. But again, I just, the basic premise for me is I don't believe it's appropriate at all. I don't think it's something we should be aspiring to, but that doesn't mean we teach our children to hate these people, to treat them with disrespect or anything that resembles that. We want a respectful society where people can have differences of opinion, but we don't need to celebrate degeneracy or what somebody does in the privacy of two adults consenting between each other. We don't need to normalize those things for children. It's still okay to have that line in the sand. It's still okay to not see that as an okay thing. But in the society we live in, you're now considered a bigot. You're considered, just a hateful person if you don't get in line with whatever the trend of the day is. And I would add that we will look back at these points in history, these last few years, and the progression of this, and where it goes from now is up to, the people all around the world that are being inundated with this stuff. We will look back at this not as something that was normal. This is something that will stick out as either a turning point or as something that will be recognized as, wow, like, I can't believe society thought that was okay. Like, not just thought it was okay, but wanted to celebrate it. The media promoted it. There's a difference between you do you. I'll treat you with respect and we can go our separate ways and be separate humans and get along, and having to affirm someone's opinion of themselves or how they see themselves, down to the point where now children need to be involved, the most vulnerable in society. And the concern, I think, from, again, if you want to make it left, right, from the right, is not to misalign everyone, but you're going to open the door to issues here. There will be problems that come with this. There will be people that seek to exploit it. And unrelated, but I remember when the transgender bathroom law was passed, where they could go into whatever bathroom they deemed fit. At the time, I worked with a police officer, and he was a retired police officer, and he was livid. He was absolutely pissed that this law had been passed. And it's not, he said, I don't think they're all bad or anything like that. But what I'm telling you is this will be exploited. And he's 100% right. And it has been. And you can find articles indicating that has already happened. And he told me a story at the time about a grown man who went into the female bathroom, into the roof. And the only reason they found him was that he fell through. And he goes, well, now that guy doesn't even have to hide. That was the kind of the story he told me. And so you bring this out, and it's, again, we're not just talking about you do you. If you don't harm anyone and you do your own thing, we don't care. We're talking, no, we need to affirm it. And if you don't affirm it, you're a bigot, you're hateful, you're uncompassionate, and you're whatever. You're an idiot, you're a Republican, like whatever. They want to throw all these and attach all these labels. But the concern is that it's opening the door to problems. Again, if I was a predator, I would see that as an opportunity. And I think that's when you see these images and you see these videos and you go, well, clearly it's already happening. And when you don't acknowledge it's happening on the left, you're actually creating more problems for the people you claim to want to be helping to affirm their identity and to build them up. The same people that you claim to want to be you're claiming to want to help are the same people you're hurting by your actions or your refusal to call out the bad actors, the people that are seeking to do harm. And that in and of itself, I think, is where the crux of this issue lies.
Well, it's also cultural too. So for the left has mastered something the right is only starting to grasp. The left never apologizes. They only double down. And the conservatives are always turning on each other, and that they're it's the conservative sees a red flag somewhere, they're very quick to exploit it. They really are. But with the left, it's a lot of excuse making and doubling down. And if they are forced to apologize and that, then it is like the most sappy apology ever. I need to educate myself more. And it sounds more like a hostage video or like a struggle session than an actual legit apology. Wyatt and that, who's been very engaged with this conversation, saying it'd be nice to have conservative groups and hold actual age appropriate story hours hosted by people who children should admire, veterans, police officers, classical musicians, etc. I mean, maybe that is a route that should be taken. Personally, I would like to see, drag queen storytime hour. Go out and read to elderly people. Go entertain elderly people. Go work with elderly people, because I'll tell you, they're the people that need human interaction. The elderly people where the kids just basically throw their parents in some home and wait for them to die so they can get their inheritance, which is all too common in our Western society. Like, go out there and go work with those people. Those people need a lot of help. And that children, there's tons of resources for children out there. That would be my thing. If conservatives wanted to bring cops in to read stories to kids and that, I don't think there's any issue with that either. It's going to be interesting to see if something like that happened. I'd be interested to see how that would progress overall.
I wonder if it would even be received well. If
the schools would say no.
To it.
The school, I could just imagine Vancouver schools having to hold safe spaces because a school resource officer,
police officer, right?
Yeah. I could see like some Vancouver woke school having to hold a safe space session where everyone came out and did finger painting and, I don't know, aromatherapy art or whatever, because there was a cop who came in to read to kids and that. It's definitely, it's interesting to see the dynamics of how that's progressed in our society, and that where the people that are in, they're involved in a lifestyle that involves high risk behaviors are celebrated and affirmed. And then the people that are out there providing public service to people are quite often given a different type of treatment.
And just to bring this back around to the images here and talking about that door being open to predation, to predators, looking at this as an opportunity. Library quietly removes photo of children lying on a drag queen at story time after massive backlash. Again, why is this appropriate? You went from accepting them as they are to now, is this accepting them as they are? Like, I play with my kids that way. No one touches and plays with my kids that way. That isn't family. That even then you would say not without supervision, right? Like it just, and then I think, is this the same person? You sent this to me. The Milwaukee judge with the CEO group that organizes Drag Queen Story Hour has been arrested and charged with 7 counts of child pornography. So I guess this is a Milwaukee judge who was organizing Drag Queen Story Hours, arrested and charged with 7 counts of child pornography. Imagine that, a child predator arrested on 7 counts of child pornography wanted to see drag queen hours with children. Why would that be? Why would that be? And that is the question. Why do you think that is? And it go back to the argument that's coming from the other side that you don't want to hear, is that this does open the door to grooming. And they say that is an alt-right thing. To make that point, what I just said is considered an alt-right point from the mainstream media. by our standards today. And just to pop through a few articles here, like this is the kind of stuff that's being written through the mainstream media. CDC doc reveals the struggle of the world's most low population, pedophiles. Salon wrote one. It was taken down after major backlash called "I'm a pedophile but not a monster." Pedophilia is a sexual orientation like being straight or gay, according to criminal psychologists. And so it kind of goes through born. Here's another one. Born this way, sympathy and science for those who want to have sex with children. I'm just going to read this quick. It's not easy to listen to Terry talk about the time he had sex with a 7-year-old girl, but after a psychotherapist put us in touch, he agreed to lay it all out for me during a phone call and email, and I was enthralled. The way one might stare at a man falling from a bridge. Terry is a 38-year-old small business owner and deeply religious. He ends all our correspondence by saying, "Blessings to you, Cord." Okay, then I have my thoughts on that, but I won't push them here. But back when it happened, Terry was 20 and a meth head. He was living with his then wife, his marriage, blah, blah, blah. So this is like the sympathetic language building that I see it as a journalist. I see what they're doing here. This is to break down barriers and lower your defenses. And then
Jesus
followed
Christ. I've never actually read this, but as I'm reading a little bit ahead of what you're saying, and this is literally just smut. This article is fucking. Oh, sorry, I can't swear. It's disgusting. This article is literally like a fan fiction almost. Like, it's disgusting. What the hell?
I'm going to read a little bit more. And again, graphic content warning. You might want to turn this off. I understand it's disturbing. It's disturbing to read. It started with him walking around the house naked with an erection, making sure to amble past the little girl and inspire her curiosity. After doing that a couple times, Terry began to masturbate with the door open. When his niece would come to watch, Terry would tell her that they were doing was a secret and that she couldn't tell anyone. In my mind, I had the thought that I can never hurt her, that she would grow up trusting me. Terry said. He says wanted her to look up to him. The third time he masturbated in front of his niece, he did it while she was in the room, and he played a pornographic movie on the TV. "Do you want to try what they're doing?" he asked, motioning to the woman riding the man on screen. His niece said yes, and she took off her shorts before straddling him. I'm just going to end it there.
Who published that? Who published that, by the way?
I'll come back to that in a second. I just want to add context here to say we're not talking about all. This is related to the drag queen story hour. I want to make it clear. We're not talking. We said this. Our concern here, based on the evidence we presented, is that this opens the door to this sort of predation, and that we're seeing in the mainstream media a consistent effort to elicit sympathy for this group of people that not only acts out on it, but the ones that don't act out on it. So both those contexts. And this is from where was it? This one was written by Gawker, I guess, Gawker.com.
Oh, of course. Okay.
Cord Jefferson.
I'm not okay. That explains everything. Gawker wrote it. All right.
I'm unfamiliar with their web. Like, again, this is all brand new to me. So for me, this was a lot of, drinking from a fire hose on a topic I'm very naive about, to be honest.
Well, and here's the thing too, like, and I'm going to plug my show here for a sec. Sorry, I'm going to plug my show. So I recently, I did a live stream with John Euler. He runs a sex offender treatment group from the States. He's worked with sex offenders in prison and that, and his big target right now is the furry community and the stuff that goes on in the furry community and that. But it's what's insane to me is that there's a push to normalize this. Now, I'm going to go off on a quick sort of limb here. So I listened to James Lindsay. All right. He does a podcast series. He's the one who kind of made the OK groomer sort of into the vernacular. He just recently is back on Twitter now and upsetting all the usual suspects. But to him, and again, I don't know where all this came from. I don't know what the end game is overall, but what I'd kind of listened to on his podcast was that This is like some type of Faustian deal between the Hegelian, neo-Marxist left and the pedophiles. Basically, you help break down society barriers and you help train the new Red Guard, and we'll give you access to children type thing. And most of those French philosophers were all perverts too, Foucault and all them. A lot of the he went into a pretty deep graphic detail about Alfred Kinsey, who basically was a pedophile and a pervert that did sexual experiments on children, and there is a lot of material there that got kind of put into the education system afterwards. And Lucille says, baloney, you don't know where this is all going. I'd like to say I know where this is all going. I'd like to say that. I really would. I really like to turn around and just say, this is all going to lead to a thing where all children are going to be molested by pedophiles, and it's going to bring in the new communist revolution, and it's going to bring the downfall of Western society and Judeo-Christian values and capitalism. I'd love to say that is simply just the explanation. But the thing is, I don't really know where it's all going. I really don't, because it just seems too destructive even for them. Well, okay, depopulation, sure. I can agree with that. I'll agree with that, Lucille, that depopulation is definitely part of it. But I don't know if you've ever read Brave New World, and Brave New World, the kind of a version of 1984, a dystopian hellscape, is that in Brave New World, the opposite of 1984, where all pleasure was forbidden. In Brave New World, all pleasure was mandatory. And that included, in that novel, the early sexualization of children. And what that would do is, in that novel, would basically, it would ruin the child's innocence, and it would help them amalgamate into that society, and that where they were basically just an autonomous drone that got high all the time off of a chemical substance called soma. So, with that, I would say it's more akin to Brave New World, where everyone is, pleasure is accessible at all times, so meaning becomes devoid in life. But that's pretty philosophical for a live stream.
Yeah, and we got one more video we're gonna play. This is a warning. This is very disturbing. Language is inappropriate in the music that will be playing, and we're not doing this because we're trying to provide shock value. We're doing this because if you're going to talk about the issue, you need to understand both sides of the issue. And for the left wing of this, the people that are all in agreement and kind of going all in, you need to understand where the complaints are coming from, where the crux of concern is coming from. And there's ample evidence out there to be concerned about different things about this opening that door to people that seek to exploit that kind of thing with children. So we're going to go play this one here. So we'll just stop that there. I don't know if that was supposed to be a family-friendly event, but you can see the child in the back. And this is what's not being acknowledged. This is a very legitimate complaint. This is a very concerning thing. You're not just trying to, again, it's this extreme compassion where we need to affirm people, and we need to, no matter what. And that's the flip side of that, is there's people seeking, they're going, yeah, I agree. And they're doing that, and they agree with what you're saying because it opens the door to that kind of it. Now, is that person even thinking about it? I don't know. Maybe the performer there's not thinking anything of it. Maybe they're that dense in the head to think it's acceptable to dance to a song that talks about PUSSY, and it being good and sweet, and dance provocatively in front of children. Maybe they're just so dense they don't see the problem with that. But this is the concern that's being brought forward on the opposite side of the argument.
Here's the thing, and again, at the end of the day, that performer knew what song was going to be played, has a dance routine, saw that child was there, and still did that dance routine anyways. And was handed the dollar bills and that. Notice there was no fathers in the crowd there. It was all women. And that's no problem. I get it. There's women that go to drag shows, and then there's not an issue with that. But in so many of these videos where children are present, there's limited male presence there. So I think there's that shows something. I don't know what it means 100%. I really don't. I kind of joke around that it's just the woke wine mommies and that, and they want to, have their kids be woke like them so that, and, they can take a picture with the drag queen with their kids, put it on Instagram, and everyone's going to give them the likes so they get the cheap dopamine hit and they get to say how woke they are, and everyone gives them free applause points and that. So.
And I think it's become this opportunity for people to go, oh, look how virtuous I am, and I'm in with all the right things, based on whatever the thing of the day is. And it changes constantly over the last 10, 20 years. If you look at what was being pushed as what needs to be accepted, it has changed. It went from we should treat people with respect to you need to now accept me, and it not be in a disagreement in any way, shape, or form with anything going on. And if you draw a line in the sand, you're a bigot, you're a racist, you're hateful. And this is the problem, is you have a very real issue. Nobody wants somebody who dresses in drag to be attacked unnecessarily. Maybe there is some people I wouldn't associate with those people. What two adults do between each other, or what consenting adults do among each other, is for them to decide. When you bring children in it, we're allowed to have opinions. We're allowed to have strong opinions. We're allowed to think and contemplate about where these things might go and how that might be prodded and probed by people seeking to do harm. And when you see videos and pictures like this, it's hard not to at least come to the conclusion that there is people seeking to cause harm and using this as an opportunity to do so. And to not recognize that is not just wrong, it is also going to hurt the same people you claim to want to help, because you're getting a massive backlash from people who are feeling ignored, being told there's no legitimate complaint to what they're bringing forward. And as a result, it only brings more hate into the communities that the left, if we're going to play the partisan game, is trying to protect with this extreme compassion, where children need to be exposed to a drag queen story hour, drag queen shows where they're dancing, etc. And the mainstream media is feeling the need to pump this narrative in the name of inclusiveness and inclusion, but at the same time ignoring the mountain of evidence that says there's problems here, this is problematic, and it needs to be called out.
Well, and I know I said a little bit earlier, I'm gonna say it one more time here, and I won't say it again because I did say it earlier, but the counter argument that you hear from the left consistently is, well, what about the church? All these priests are molesting and raping kids in the churches, and that. Yes, the right acknowledges that. And we want those people ousted. We want them gone too. There's problems in the church, and no one is denying that. No one's saying drag queen storytime hour is bad and priests doing bad things to kids is good. No one is saying that. No one is saying that. But that is the deflection. That's the Darvo tactic. That's the idea that it's culturally relevant. That, the right, well, if they oppose this, they must be condoning this. And there's a fallacy, association fallacy, logical fallacies that go along with it. But at the end of the day, what it comes down to, it's lazy fallacy, and projection. I hear, well, the Scout organization. Well, is the Scout organization conservative? And I know several liberal friends of mine that went through the Scout system. It didn't turn them into a radical right winger, white supremacist, or anything like that. It's projection, and it's lazy projection, and it's really, really tiresome. I made a joke before, someone posted that video, one of the famous videos of Joe Biden sniffing little girl's hair, and then someone posted a video of Donald Trump, with his daughter on his lap, and that, and they said, well, you'd think this is appropriate then. And I'm like, oh, so we're playing this game.
No.
My favorite old pervert is better than your favorite old pervert. What is this? But that is one of the main tactics, and the right has to stop falling for the bait on that. Because what happens is we get away from the argument, we get caught in the weeds, we get caught in stuff like that, and it diverts from the actual topic at hand. Here's the thing. We've had decades to know that there's been horrible, awful things that have happened in the churches and in traditionally more right-leaning organizations. This is a new phenomena, and it is not being, if anything, it could be a warning. Hey, this happened in other organizations that involve youth before they started taking appropriate action for screening and training and things like that. We should be, looking at something similar for this new phenomena at the very least. Although I personally completely disagree with exposing children to drag queens whatsoever.
Yeah, and I think we're probably in a good place to wrap it up here. And that's the thing is, I don't see any scenario why this should be applauded. Children shouldn't be there to affirm the feelings of an adult. An adult shouldn't be looking for outside sources to affirm who they are in order to feel secure in themselves. That's not a healthy psyche. And then I'll hear the attacks. Well, you don't know what they've been through and the hate they fair. But self-esteem is important, and the ability to feel confident in who you are should come from within, not from others, and especially inappropriate when you bring children in to affirm those things, to affirm your insecurities. No one cares what two consenting adults or a group of consenting adults do among each other, but when you bring children in, we're allowed to have questions. We're allowed to contemplate the potential harms that will come from that. And we're allowed to examine the evidence of already exploited opportunities by predators using the same thing you're using to try to build people up and in the name of compassion and make them feel accepted is also, you need to recognize, being exploited by people that have no goodwill. They're there for very bad intentions, and they see this as an opportunity. And to not acknowledge that, I believe, will lead to more problems for the drag queen community in the future. Because if you don't call out the bad actors, people are going to just start associating all of it as the same. You can't if you don't separate them, people won't separate them. Does that make sense?
No, it does make sense. I really want to thank you for inviting me onto your show again. Another great conversation, I believe. And I don't think we've seen the end of this. It's just getting crazier out there. Everything with Kanye West today. Wow, that was insane too. It's just getting crazier. So I don't think we're seeing the end of this. I think the conversations are just beginning, but I noticed that parents are fighting back. It's not just Drag Queen Storytime Hour. It's the books in the libraries, the hypersexualized content. There is a pushback. And these parents and these people that are pushing back, they're not being called a far-right Nazi bigot, whatever. It doesn't work anymore because we've taken the meaning from all those words. Because whenever anything, that's why I don't just call leftists, that's why I just don't call every leftist a communist or a Maoist or anything like that, or I just don't call them generally far left overall, because I don't want to take the meaning away from those words. Because, if I just call every single person that opposes my viewpoint a groomer, well, then it takes away the meaning of the word groomer, and then that allows actual predators, to have an opportunity, and that. So yeah, thank you very much for letting me be on the show today.
Absolutely. Would love to have you back. Future topic comes up, I'm sure we'll see you back around. And yeah, no, just on that note, and maybe that's a good closing point, is the words have lost me. You can't keep hurling these insults at people with these nasty, nasty rhetoric words like Nazi, like communist from the right, like on and on the list goes, bigot, racist. When you do that and there isn't actually those things, like the real meaning of those words behind that, what you're doing is diminishing the meaning of those words. And I often say to people, you know who probably loves the overuse of the word Nazi? Nazis. You know who probably loves the use of the word communist, because you diminish the meaning of the word to the point where who cares? No one's going to take that seriously anymore. And so, in that being said, I think that's a good place to close. Thank you for joining Diverge Media. If you would like to see more content that is truly irreverent like this, that's willing to go into hard places, you can see that this isn't going to get the help of the algorithms. This isn't going to get out without the help of the audience putting it out. But if you appreciate hard conversations like this, share it out with some friends. On top of that, let us know you support us by giving us a small donation, maybe $2 to $5, whatever you can do at donate at divergemedia.ca. Donate to Diverge. Anything you can do is helpful. It's appreciated, but it lets us know also that we're on the right track, that this work is valued, and that our time is valued as a result. These things take time. There's communication back and forth to set up the show, get all these images together, get your videos together, get a context and structure of a show together. And it takes time, takes effort. And if you appreciate that effort, let us know. I know it's tough times for everyone out there, but truly, if we want a strong independent media, we need to fund a strong independent media. Thank you. I'm Greg Staley from Diverge Media. Until next time.